South Africa says it is concerned about reports that the United States will begin taking in white South Africans who claim they're being racially discriminated against at home. South Africa says the claims are unfounded. The Foreign Ministry said it is most regrettable that it appears that the resettlement of South Africans to the United States under the guise of being refugees is entirely politically motivated and designed to question South Africa's constitutional democracy. Relations between the two countries have been deteriorating since U.S. President Donald Trump returned to the White House with his powerful South African-born advisor Elon Musk. In February, Trump accused South Africa of confiscating land, echoing comments that Musk has made about alleged racial discrimination in his homeland. Earlier this year, hundreds of white South Africans rallied outside the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria to show their support for Trump and his decision to cut aid to South Africa's government. Now, under South Africa's apartheid system, which was in place until 1994, the minority white population oppressed the majority black population, who were treated as second-class citizens. 3 decades after apartheid ended, some white South Africans say they are now facing oppression at the hands of the black majority, and some are moving, resettling to the United States. I want to pull in now Loren Landau. He's professor of migration and development at the University of Oxford in the UK. He is also a research professor at the University of the Witwatersrand African Center for Migration and Society. Professor, it's good to have you with us this evening. The white South Africans who are applying for asylum in the United States, what are they basing their claims on?
They're basing their claims essentially on a fiction that white South Africans are being targeted, that white South Africans are disadvantaged by the new dispensation, and that they have a direct fear that they're being targeted in one way or another. Of course, their privileges of the past have been diminished somewhat, but by no means are they disadvantaged by South African standards. And so what we're seeing is, in fact, a claim based almost entirely on a fiction and on random incidents.
What about the claims by U.S. President Trump and Elon Musk that white South African farmers are victims of racial discrimination?
White South African farmers have struggled in the last 20 years, not because of racial discrimination, but because they have lost many of the subsidies that propped up white farmers during the apartheid era. They do face violence, as does everyone in South Africa. They do face economic uncertainty, as does everyone in South Africa. I think what we need to understand is that Trump's claims have very little to do with South Africa and are about his domestic campaign to show that there is global assault on whiteness, white privilege, that there is a global assault on white Christian men particularly, and this is a way of signaling that message back to his constituencies at home.
What about the man from South Africa, Elon Musk? He claims that South Africa's government is actively promoting white genocide. Is that accusation justified?
I don't think there's any justification for genocide. There is widespread crime. South Africa has an enormously high civilian murder rate, but most of the people being killed, most of the people being displaced or victimized are Black. There's clearly people in South Africa who dislike the white population. There are many more who dislike Elon Musk, but there's no signs of a genocide.
The South African government has introduced various policies to redress apartheid's legacy of economic exclusion. What is the aim of these policies?
Well, the aim of the policies is essentially to restore the dignity and the opportunities that were robbed over hundreds of years from the country's Black, mixed race, and other populations. There are high taxes. There are efforts to redistribute wealth. But white South Africans have one of the highest standards of living, at least in material terms, of anyone in the world. So even if they are paying taxes, even if they are contributing voluntarily or not to these kind of transformation programs, nothing is being taken away from them. They've been allowed to keep their land. they've been allowed to keep their businesses, they've been allowed to keep their privilege.
So it's not true. I mean, there have been reports of farmland expropriations taking place, that farmland has been taken away from white landowners.
There are efforts to redistribute land, to be sure. This is to compensate for the huge amount of land that was taken from people during the apartheid era. But South Africa has always compensated people for that. They can take land in the way that any other government can to build roads, to build infrastructure. But there's been no effort, and the new laws are very clear on this effort in this regard, to take land without compensation.
Do these policies, I'm just wondering, do they actually correct the historical wrongs that they are attempting to put right? Do they do that?
Well, I think many people would say that these laws do not go far enough. There is actually some domestic support for taking land and redistributing it. The white population still owns the majority of land. The white population is still overrepresented in business and in the higher echelons of the socioeconomic strata. So there's a lot more work to do. But of course, these processes can't happen overnight. Land redistribution is just one of many processes, many policies in place to try to address this. We all have critiques of those policies. We are all concerned about their slow pace, but none of them have overtly disadvantaged any single group.
Should white South Africans qualify for asylum abroad? Is there a legal basis for their claims?
I'm not a lawyer, but I would hazard to guess that they absolutely do not. There are many people in South Africa, refugees from the DRC, from Sudan, from elsewhere, who have been asking to be resettled to the United States or other places for years. They have a very strong case. White Afrikaners cannot show that they have a well-founded fear of persecution. They cannot show that they have been victimized in any particular targeted way. So I think under international law and under US law, they have no claim to asylum. They can come as immigrants, they can come as other kinds of migrants, but as refugees and asylum seekers, it makes very little sense.
So these claims by Afrikaners, white farmers, that their lives are in danger or that their lives are being threatened because they are white, that you're saying would not qualify for asylum refugee status?
If there was strong evidence of systemic targeting of white people because of for violence, for persecution of any kind, they would have a claim. The issue is that evidence is completely lacking, that the murder rate, that the prosecutions, that the persecutions, that the redistribution of land does not affect them disproportionately. We can make a lot of critiques about the South African government. We can make a lot of critiques about language, and there is racism, anti-white, anti-black racism in the country, but there's no sign of overt persecution.
Professor Landau, we appreciate your time and your valuable insights on this Friday. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.